My name is Michael. My last name is Monroe. I grew up in two different kind of neighborhoods. I grew up with part of my life with my mother, and this was usually in a lower income neighborhood, like say Jane and Finch, Driftwood, where there was, dominant gangs and violence and stuff that, I didn't understand. And then, when things got rough, I went with my grandparents, which I was most of the time I was there because they came from a different part of life, an older traditional Italian family, three, four course meals a day, always food on the table, never missed out on anything, always had security, support from them. And I went to school across the street from there, to an elementary school up until grade 8. So most of the time I spent in my early childhood with my grandparents because I liked being there, especially with my grandmother. I mean, who doesn't love their grandmother? They always do everything for us.
We were all very close. His dad didn't play a big part in his life. I mean, things happened, but he always had that missing in his life. And it didn't matter where I was, with who he was, there was always that emptiness.
I was angry that my father wasn't around since since I was born. I went to visit him and whatnot where he was, and then he would never come home with me, so that made me angry. I was angry that maybe other people weren't happy in my life, and I didn't necessarily talk about it. I always sort of physically displayed it or kept it to myself, and it built up.
He wanted to have just a simple family. And with the way things happened with his father, he didn't have that. And there was nothing to fill it. No matter if he had his grandmother, his grandfather, my relatives, his mother, his aunt, nobody.
I resented even my parents, you know, because they weren't able to fix them. They weren't able to fix the situation either. Like my mother wasn't able to bring somebody else in, like a stepdad or something like that. I got into the wrong things, like whether it be hanging out in the neighborhood with the wrong people, being a menace to society, doing illegal things because I was trying to fill a gap in my life.
He'd go out and do drugs. And he would do drugs until he didn't have any money. And then when he didn't have money, go out and get into doing stupid things to get arrested. I was afraid that he had gone so far that he just didn't know if he was coming or going. And that either something was going to happen, either he was going to end up in jail, or he was just going to die.
I've seen a lot of people get hurt and go to jail, and tremendous loss and death. Everybody around me was drinking alcohol, and I grew up in an Italian family, and alcohol was like water to my grandparents and uncles and aunts. So wine was always abundant, and I think it started with the family, and then it turned to cigarettes, and then weed, and then cocaine, and then that's it. You know, it just took its toll on me. You hurt somebody or you take something that's not yours, that's not legal, and in this day and age it's punishable by law. And these are the sort of things I had to learn. So I always had a good job, but I always inflicted this pain on myself. Since I was a kid, I had a huge relationship with God and with Jesus. I always was asking for help or asking for forgiveness, but I took it as a big joke too. I took religion as a huge joke. I thought going to church was a joke. I just stood there and sort of pretended sometimes. But then at times I had some sincerity, because when I made mistakes, they always forgave me. So this was sort of my gateway to understanding the mercy sometimes that even the world has, human beings have. But I knew God was probably more merciful. I found out about Islam when I was 15 years old, about 15 years ago. I had a good friend. We always played basketball together. He always invited me to come to the mosque, but I never did. And I used to eat with Muslim families. They always were very hospitable to me. 15 years later, I just, I started to spiritually grow because I was looking for an answer. At some point, I stumbled across a Quran because I thought the spiritual path I was taking, I could be a part of every religion, and I can delve into any one of them that I want and practice any one of them I want, all at the same time. But then when I stumbled across the Quran and I started reading it slowly and I started taking in the knowledge, I started realizing that I can't be a part of every religion, and that I can't, Islam is not every religion, it's one religion. 4 to 5 months down the line, I was working at Eaton Center at the time selling suits. I seen some people giving Islam information outside the Eaton Center, and I said, what is it? What do you have to do to become a Muslim? And they said, you just have to say these words. I said, okay, I'll be a Muslim. And I became a Muslim that day. I think the first 6 months to 8 months was very difficult. I didn't pray. I didn't fast. I didn't eat halal meat. So I needed some sort of support. I didn't take it at first. I didn't think I needed it. I gave up on it. 'Cause every time I called the brother, he was there for me, Muhammad Heft. But I still was taking advantage of things in life in general. And he was just another thing that I could take advantage of. But eventually, I think I started going to the mosque more and more and more. Then I started finally to pray 5 times a day, on time. That lasted a little while. Then, I started getting weak again. And, some of the old friends were still hanging around that I associated myself with for probably 10 or 15, 20 years. My mother and I, we have a great home. We had everything there, but we just weren't getting along. Maybe I wasn't being nice to her. She understood that I became a Muslim, but we never really talked about it. So we got to the point where we couldn't even live with each other at one point. So I called Muhammad Heft again, and what do you know, he had a place available for me. And I had to take it because it was the only thing I can afford. There's classes here on manners now. And since I've been taking these classes here, tremendous love has been put back into the relationship with my mother and I, which is probably the biggest success I've had since I've been here. I've got tremendous baggage out of my head and off my shoulders.
He doesn't go out and drink. He doesn't go out and do the drugs. He went back to school, got his credits, started working, paying his bills, and he can listen and take in what I'm saying instead of just letting it go one ear, not the other. He's actually making a change for himself.
This has helped me tremendously, just by being nice to my mother. Things have changed.
I'm proud of my son. Well, I love him very much too.
La ilaha illallah, 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 ya Rabbi khudh biyadi. La ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah, la ilaha illallah.